I personally cut my teeth racing cross and made a name for myself racing cross. And I love cross. I still think it's the coolest, most fun racing. But at the same time, I think that, you need to adapt and evolve what's happening in the racing scene. And right now that is gravel. And I think to kind of be stubborn as like a one discipline racer and just be like, I'm only a cross racer, I'm only a World Cup mountain bike racer. You can do that if you are the absolute best, maybe. But if you're not, like if you're just maybe a podium contender, like I don't know how you can make a living and stay relevant by just doing that. And gravel is this thing that has come up and it's got a ton of support and it's super fun. So I think that you kind of have to like embrace it and do it. And it's actually a good time. So like you said, there's a bunch of different riders coming in from a bunch of different disciplines. And that's why these gravel races are so dynamic. Like some races are really fitness oriented. Some are really technical. Some are both. And you're seeing Keegan win all of them, but everyone else, kind of beyond that, there's a bit of a shuffle. And you're seeing guys that are like maybe not as fit, but can drive the bike really well, pull results on a more technical course. You're seeing the guys that are just super horsepower, not a lot of like technical skill, pull results at races that are less technical. So you have a culmination of riders from all over the place coming together and doing these races. And I think that is why they're interesting.
Before you were a bike racer, what were you into?
Oh man, like I did all the sports, like baseball, soccer. What else? I always rode my bike, but I didn't really think of racing as like, I didn't think much of it, but I always rode. I liked that the most. When I had to go to like baseball practice, I would have preferred to have stayed home and been on my bike. So soccer, the last team I was on, I got kicked off. I got in a fight at practice. That was in like, maybe like early middle school, maybe late elementary. And then in middle school, I was on my last baseball team, which was like graduating from little league to what's called pony league. Played that. I was friends with the kids whose dads were like running the teams and stuff. So I ended up on the best team, which was probably my downfall. Like I ended up on the best team, not because I was that good, because I was friends with those guys. And being on the best team means you're surrounded by the best players, which means my mediocre skills didn't give me much playing time. And I felt like I was always going to these games and just sitting on the bench, and I would have preferred to have not been there. And I told my dad I didn't want to do it. And he's like, that's fine, but you have to tell, if that's something you want, you have to tell the coaches that you don't want to do anymore. Like, I'm not going to quit for you. And so, yeah, I did. I just like stopped halfway through and then just rode my bike. And then right around 8th grade, we have a high school racing series in California called NICA. A lot of states have it now. The NorCal League, I knew there was a bike racing league in high school, and that would obviously start in 9th grade. But in 8th grade, I realized that I could get out of PE in middle school, and I could get out of class early to ride with the high school mountain bike team. And I thought that that would just be a continuation of what I did for fun anyways, which was like jumping and downhill riding. And I showed up to the first day of practice and they're doing hill repeats, which was like a total backfire on my plans because hill repeats aren't easy and they're not fun. But I was also really competitive, so I didn't want to, not win the hill repeats. And then next thing I know, I'm like wearing spandex and shaving my legs and racing cross country. And getting out of school early in 8th grade to do it. And then once I was properly in high school, I did all the high school races. Because as an 8th grader, I wasn't allowed to do the high school series yet.
When did you have a sense that you might be good at racing bikes?
Hard to say. I mean, I feel like at least in the cross country series, I knew I was decent in high school because I'd be, top 5 at these races. And I mean, when you're a high school and you're getting top 5 at these NorCal races, man, I just feel like I was so cocky. Like I thought I was so good being like a top 5 NorCal rider. And so I guess I thought I was good then. Whether that was warranted or not is a whole different story. But then I started racing cross in, I think, 9th grade and felt like I was doing well locally there. One day I won the junior race and then the B's race. And I'd say, I don't know, about 9th, 10th grade, I felt like I was pretty good at cross country and cyclocross, but better at cross. Then right around junior year of high school, I got on Cal Giant Specialized, which was the big team in the United States, which was based nearby Santa Cruz. And then I was starting to perform at a national level, and I knew that at that point I was probably, had something going for me, talent or performance wise. So midway through high school, I think you could say my thoughts were warranted there with performance on the national level, but thinking you're good in high school because you're performing in California is a small pond, I guess.
What year would this have been that you got on the Cal Giant team?
Cal Giant I graduated high school in 2013. 2012 would have been junior year. All through freshman year, I knew that Cal Giant was a team in the area because I knew people that were on it or affiliated with it. And I would just, whenever I got a chance to talk to the team manager, I'd send him, the local newspaper article that mentioned my name at a race. I would just email him. Like I was relentless. The guy probably thought, I was super annoying. But eventually, I think in sophomore, junior year, I built bikes at Specialized one summer. And then Specialized gave me a frame for my work. And then Cal Giant gave me the parts to build it. And then I continued to do well locally. And then I vividly remember junior year of high school in 2012, I was sitting in English class and I just got a ticket in my email, a plane ticket to go to Louisville, Kentucky to race the U.S. Grand Prix of Cyclocross. And I'm like, I didn't even talk to my parents about it. I've just been talking to the team manager and he's like, okay, well, like, here's a ticket, let's go. And I think I was second and third at that race. And then after that, I was pretty much fully supported on the team.
Who was on Cal Giant at that time? Are we talking like Henry Kramer? Like, who are the Cal Giant stars at that moment in time?
So at that moment, so we had like Henry Kramer and Gannon Mile were like the masters guys, kind of like, I guess like even like mentors in a way. Justin Robinson was another big one who is local in Santa Cruz. And then as far as like the A team, like the professional racers was Cody Kaiser, who still races cross. This other guy, Nick Wayhall, who was kind of the year I was coming in, he was going out. So I think that he left a vacancy that he left a vacancy at the beginning of the season that I was ready to fill. And, the team had already probably budgeted for having him there. So once he was kind of phasing out, I was able to come in. So yeah, Cody Kaiser, Meredith Miller were big. And then I think the next year we signed Yannick Ekman and maybe his brother Robin Ekman, who were on like the Livestrong road team at the time. So yeah, they came on. And then I think 2014 was my first year out of high school. That year was Logan Owen, Cody Kaiser, L. Anderson, Meredith Miller, and myself. And it was a 5-person cross team. And yeah, that was kind of our program until the team merged. Yeah, the team didn't fold. It didn't just disappear. It merged with the Hoggins Berman in action in 2015. But yeah, that was our lineup until basically the end of the cross program.
And what happened with cyclocross during that period of time? Because that was kind of an apex period of time for cross in the United States. So can you describe what the scene was like? What were the races like? What was the community like?
Yeah. God, cross had such that was, I guess, an apex time of the scene, really, because when I came in, there was still the USGP of cyclocross, which was the United States Grand Prix, which was a cohesive series from, I forget all the races that were in it, but it was a national series with big prize money. There was a whole shot preem at every race. It was like $500 to get to the corner first, like legit money. And you had big pros still. You had Ryan Trebone, you had Jeremy Powers, you had Tim Johnson, Jamie Driscoll. You had, I don't know, the top 5 guys were making a legitimate living doing it. And then there was a bit of a changing of the guard. Those guys were starting to retire. And before they retired, the USGP disappeared. Like, that was a series that had been going strong for a long time and had like a guaranteed prize money at these races. And so when the USGP disappeared, and I think it was 2012, 2013 was the last season, that was a big blow for sure. And then on top of that, now the Jeremy Powers and the Trebones and the Tim Johnsons were also retiring at about that time. So you lost some big names and big personalities, and you lost a big series, and it left a void of recognized professionals and a void of like these big races. And so as far as races go, like independent promoters tried to fill the shoes of these races. And they did, I think, for a while, but without that, without the big series organization and without those big names, it was hard to maybe just keep the sponsored dollars involved in it. I wish I could pinpoint it, but I think it's a combination of all those things.
Because it used to be the case that during cyclocross season, for probably 15, 20 race days a year, you would have a race every Saturday and Sunday for 3 or 4 months just in NorCal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then there's the NorCal, Northern California scene, for those that don't know, was also humongous. Yeah. So there's the national series, and then in California as well. I mean, there was big race every single weekend, a Saturday, Sunday race. And we had the series called Bay Area Super Prestige, which had decent prize money, had humongous fields. And then same thing, that guy was, I think all this timing of people retiring, getting out of it happened at once, and it just left a void and a vacuum that didn't get filled in the same either professional manner that was already there, or just didn't get filled, period. And that hole was never filled properly. Because like you're saying, in Northern California, during cross season, I still feel grateful. I can go race most weekends at home, but it's not the same, 80-person elite men fields that there were. Because maybe 80 is a bit of an overstatement, but it could be 50 to 80. The B's field would be 80. The C's field would be 60. The women's fields, the women's elite fields were 30, which is huge. Now there's 10 maybe. There were so many people at these races, and these people didn't stop racing their bikes, but I don't know why. I don't know why the cross thing fell out.
Do you have a theory?
Man, I have a theory with the last couple of years more, which is industry support. I think fewer companies are making dedicated cross bikes. Cause there was a while where I guess Focus would be the first company, Jeremy Powers was on Focus bikes, and they always made, a really good cross bike with dedicated cross geometry, cross specific design, right? Things that are good for being on the muddy cross course. The bikes turn fast. They're quick handling. Taking this bike and hauling ass down a fire road is it's not a gravel bike. It's kind of squirrely when you're going that fast. And I think what happened was maybe these companies started to see this gravel thing kind of emerge, and how there was so much turnout there, because cyclocross is racing, but most of these early gravel events were not called gravel races. They're called gravel rides. And so if you're not a bike racer, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to this gravel ride and there's aid stations all along the 100-mile route, and I can drink a beer and I can chill with my friends and I don't have to feel intimidated by the word racing. And so I think that a lot of people started going to those events. The industry started to see this, and they started kind of like morphing these cross bikes into bikes that could fit bigger tires and, hold more water bottles. And I think that we saw probably just a positive trend in that gravel riding, and the bike started to change to that, and cross was seeing like a stagnation or a decline. And they're just putting less R&D dollars into making a like dedicated cross bike, and kind of putting more into like maybe making a cross bike that could fit bigger tires, and then a cross bike with a lower bottom bracket, then a cross bike that was longer. And then all of a sudden it's like gravel bike, So I think the industry lost a bit of interest and they saw a different growing market. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
How did that feel as a professional athlete, and a professional athlete who you were primarily focused on cyclocross for a while? When did you have a sense of, okay, this is moving in a different direction? And what adjustments did you have to make both as a business person and as an athlete?
Yeah. So after Cal Giant folded in 2015, didn't fold, merged. Fold's not a great word because that's not what happened. I was left to my own devices to race, basically. Cal Giant's like, hey, we're merging with this road team and you're not even a U23 next year anyways, so like you were going to be off the program anyways. And I understood that. And at the same time, Santa Cruz Bikes, which is in my hometown, 10 minutes away from my house, also made a carbon stigmata that year. And they actually were talking to me when I was on Cal Giant, but they had a cyclocross bike, and this is in 2015, 16. So this bike was a legit cross bike. And I was able to basically take my national title I had in 2015 in the U23 category, ask for some support from Santa Cruz, and I got it. And then my coach at the time, Chris McGovern, was very like DIY, man, you can do this. Like, you got to find money here, here, and here. And this is kind of how you do it. And, I did. I found some money, and, I think I was doing I was probably grossing like 17 grand, and, doing the cross season, like pretty legit on like 12 grand, and paying Chris a day rate and flying us and rental cars and all that. And I was doing all that, and I found the money, and that was hard because, I'm doing this, I'm trying to run this little team, make sure everyone has what they need. And at the same time, like, be proving to my mom that like I can make money doing this. Cause I was also going to school in the spring, which I'd always missed the first week of for Cyclocross World Champs. So I was doing all that, and I did it that way for a long time, kind of putting together my own budget, paying a mechanic, this and that. And then let's see, I did it up until like COVID, basically. And then I started working with a different coach right at the beginning of COVID, just coincidental timing. And, COVID started in February. March, we saw cross country and road races start getting canceled. And I'm like, the cross season will still be there in 5-6 months. And then that got canceled. And then our marketing boss at Santa Cruz, like I say boss, his name's Jordan. He doesn't really like that term, but he's the marketing guy, and he does the sports marketing, and he does the athletes and the teams. He used to race road and had a little bit more like endurance background focus, or I shouldn't say focus, but he knew the endurance scene better maybe than the previous guy did. And he was kind of keen on putting together an endurance program for Santa Cruz. And it was in the middle of COVID, and he knew that Keegan was in the area in Santa Cruz. He's like, dude, do you think that like maybe Keegan would want to have a meeting and maybe see about racing for Santa Cruz? And I was like, I don't know Keegan that well, but like I know him well enough to maybe set up a meeting. And I wasn't the only one who made this happen, but Keegan met with Jordan, and eventually, you know, the stars aligned there, and Keegan was on the Santa Cruz program. And that was in, I guess, 2021. And Keegan is a big name, and he brought a little bit more support to like the endurance side of Santa Cruz, because previously Santa Cruz was pretty heavy in like gravity racing, so enduro and downhill. And once Keegan was on, Keegan kind of wanted to do these big like FKT attempts and big endurance stuff and just big, grueling, hard events, and or just trials. Like an FKT is not a race. You just go out and try to go as fast as you can on something and tell people how fast you did it. And so once Keegan was doing that, like I was just tagging along. I'm like, yeah, dude, that sounds cool. Like, let's do this. Let's do that. Blah, blah, blah. And started seeing how big these events were. And I was going to those with Keegan. And then, you know, at the same time, Cross was seeing that still is, I think it's plateaued at a lower point, but I was like, I'm fairly decent at racing my bike off-road and these other disciplines, so I can do more than just cyclocross. And I have the support to do more than just cyclocross because Santa Cruz has this new program, the Hit Squad. And I think I just got really lucky with Keegan being there and getting the support because Keegan was more around, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have got the support to be a gravel racer or like a cross-country guy. I was just kind of a cyclocross guy. So I think it was good timing. And for me, like I still get to race cross. So it's not like I'm abandoning this thing I love. I'm just doing more other racing in the summertime. And yeah, I just feel really lucky to have that support. So I'm bummed that cross isn't what it was. But at the same time, like I said, being kind of business minded, I do have to treat this like a business because I don't have a job. I'm a professional. I don't have a normal job. I'm a professional bike racer. So I feel like you have to, there's a point in my life where I felt like my trajectory as a athlete had to be going at least parallel to my trajectory as becoming an adult. And, you know, that means making a little bit more money and yeah, growing up a bit, right? Because you do see a lot of people that are like just going all in on cycling and maybe making just scrapping by. And I'm like, man, like, do you have any money in like a retirement account or like, I don't know. I just don't, when I'm done bike racing, I don't want to be hung out to dry and have nothing. I got to be trying to, you know, make a life for myself after being a bike racer. And this is what enables me to do that. And, you know, have an amazing time racing right now.
Yeah, that sounds like a positive aspiration to build a life that will be there after you finish as a professional racer. And as you mentioned, you kind of had a couple of these pivotal moments when there was the transition from Cal Giant, it getting absorbed into merging with another team. And then when COVID hit, all the races were shut down. So during those two periods of time, you made some adjustments. How did it feel to have kind of everything, the world as you knew it, kind of got the rug pulled out from underneath you? So how did you navigate that? Did you stay calm? Did you freak out? Did you think about doing something else for a living at all?
I was like, let's say right when COVID, I guess let's talk COVID time. You know, I was lucky enough that like I wasn't, I don't really know if anyone just was hung out to dry and companies were like, we're not paying anymore. Like, there goes your contract. You're not racing, so we hire you to race so you don't get paid or whatever. Santa Cruz doesn't burn their athletes like that, period. Like if you're on with Santa Cruz, they're going to support you through good and bad. And so I was supported through the bad being COVID, but at the same time, I also, like I said, started working with a new coach coincidentally right around that same time. And when you start working with a new coach, you're like super keen on showing your new coach your ability to train and, you know, do their workouts and, I don't know, perform. So I think starting to work with Dave, my current coach, at the beginning of COVID was motivating because he would just throw workouts at me day after day after day. And at the same time, I think that racing, I don't know what COVID is. I don't know how long it's going to last. I think that there's a good chance maybe there's a race in 3 weeks and I got to be prepared. So it was a nice break that I got to like stay home and work on my Subaru, build a project car and stuff, and not have to worry about necessarily like jumping on a plane. But at the same time, I also was able to go train every day and be motivated by my new coach to go do these workouts. And yeah, I mean, the only difference was, like I said, I just wasn't traveling and I was spending more time on the patio drinking beer with my family. And yeah, I mean, I had it easy. Like it was, I'm fortunate I had it easy because not a lot of people did. I was continuing to get my support from the brands that I rode for, and I was motivated by my new coach to continue training, and maybe a little bit of self-ignorance thinking that there was going to be a bike race in a month, and that was not the case. So I was able to just completely stay calm and keep riding.
And Tobin, when you made the decision to begin working with a new coach, which is a big shift for a professional athlete and specifically in endurance sports, of course, all the effort that you put in is critical. Having a training program you believe in and using methodologies that you believe will be the most effective for you is of equal importance. So how did you go about finding someone who was the right fit for you? And when did you know it was time to work with someone new and do something different?
That's a good question. Chris McGovern was my last coach, and he and I worked together for like 7 years. And I mean, Chris is responsible for whatever work ethic I have. Like Chris really drilled that into me because I was working with him through high school. And, you know, I think a young athlete does need a coach that's kind of a hard ass to make sure they learn how to, you know, execute their workouts and realize that like it takes hard work. It's not easy. So he and I worked together for about 7 years. And then let's see, right around before COVID. So COVID, what was it? February 2020 about for COVID. I think the fall of 2019, Chris was my coach and mechanic. And I think we were just like butting heads a little more than we normally would. We're also good friends. So, you know, you just have those, you know, conflicting moments, I guess, with your friends and your coaches. And that was fall of 2019. And then we run into the new year, and I started working with a gym coach. And he lived in Salt Lake City. His name's Art. I flew out to Salt Lake City to visit Art and go over some training stuff and whatnot. And I was just talking to Art. I was like, I don't know, this and that. I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling that way. And a new coach was like this really scary thing. But I was like, maybe it's time to try some other stuff. And Art has a gym he uses, and upstairs is a cycling studio. And this guy walked in and just ran up to the cycling studio, shares the same entrance. And then Art's like, that guy's Dave. Like Dave he's a cycling coach. And I was like, oh, cool. And then Dave did something quick, then left. And then Art was like, you know, like, do you want to meet with Dave? Like I could call him, maybe we go get coffee. And he called Dave, and then Dave was down, and we just drove down the road and all had coffee together. And I was just talking to Dave about my training and what I'd like to do and some maybe things I wasn't currently digging. And he just basically, I mean, he didn't do anything. He didn't say anything fake, but everything that he said, I was like, I just like this philosophy. I like what his vibe is. And I was like, you know what, dude, like, let's do it. Like, I got nothing to lose. Let's give it a shot. And then, I had to then call my, you know, Chris, who's like my good friend and 7-year-long coach, and have the hard conversation. And I remember just like sitting outside on the porch at my house, like kind of just in tears, like being like, hey man, like it's nothing personal, but like I got to take this step and try something new. And I remember that you basically, coaches are like a monthly, like you pay a coach monthly or something. And Chris was working for a coaching company, and it was like the last day of the month, and I just been putting it off. And I'm like, dude, you got to call him today, or like you're basically locked in for another month. And I just pushed it off for so long. And he even knew too, when I called him, he's like, yeah, I figured this is maybe the last day, because of the last day of the month and everything. But yeah, I've been working with Dave now for about 3 years, and yeah, it's been good. Like I see myself evolving as an athlete with Dave, like especially trending more towards like a big endurance engine. And yeah, I don't know, as long as I'm enjoying my training and he's down with what I'm doing and I'm down with what he's doing, like I see it going for a long time.
It's definitely tough to pick up the phone and make that call to a coach you've been working with. I mean, certainly more so for a professional athlete, but also any amateur athlete, I'm sure, who's made that call and had their Training Peaks account go back to the free version for a short period of time before they're back with another coach, right?
Dude, totally.
It's right. It's like, it's a weird feeling. And
it's like breaking up with a partner, it's like a breakup.
It's a very personal thing. They know you really well.
Yeah, they do. And it sounds like you've maybe experienced that. It's like a breakup, and you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. And the only difference is there's probably no emotional, trauma or whatever. You're not going to run into your old coach coaching someone new and just be like all sad.
I mean, they might be coaching someone who's kicking your ass potentially, but hopefully not.
I know. And totally. I do. Like, there's Kerry Warner is coached by my old coach, Chris. And, Kerry like pretty much beat me at every cross race this year. And I'm like, damn, like, I just want to beat Kerry. But yeah, it's funny like that. We're all competitive, and, that's why we race. We're competitive. We want to beat each other.
It's all part of the game. And you mentioned, so you were out in Utah meeting with your strength coach. Can you talk a little bit about what do you do from a strength point of view? Because I think if people don't have a deep knowledge of the training that cyclists do, they might not understand that strength training plays an important part in it as well. So what were you doing with them, and what do you do for strength training to complement your other training these days?
Yeah. So Art O'Connor is his name. He's based in Salt Lake. His thing is WUKAR Fit, WUKAR, wake up, kick ass, repeat. And he is my gym coach. I got linked up with him through Keegan. He was Keegan's gym coach for a long time before I started working with him. And strength training with cycling, I think, is kind of it feels like this mysterious thing to a lot of cyclists, but it's really not. I mean, if you're stronger, it's never a bad thing to be stronger, whether that enables you to make more power on the bike or enables you to crash harder without getting hurt. It's unfortunate, but it happens. And having more muscle on your body is never a bad thing. So as far as our gym sessions, we're doing a lot of core work, obviously. And then, like Olympic lifts. So deadlifts are big ones, squats, step ups, Romanian, split squats, leg, glute, lower back, anything in there. And, we're just looking to do this to gain a bit of strength, and we're doing this twice a week. So I usually like to do it Tuesday, Thursday at home. Sometimes if I don't do or if I'm not racing, I'll do a Tuesday, Friday session. And I go to the gym before I train. So I get up, have a quick little breakfast, head to the gym. They're not terribly long workouts, 45 minutes to an hour. That, that's getting there. That's warming up. That's, doing your rounds. And, I really enjoy it because it's something different. And as a cyclist, we spend a lot of time out on the roads, alone, because you're doing specific work. So it's not like I get to be like talking to my friends at home, be like, hey, yeah, you want to ride together? But also like maybe just sit on and shut up because like I got to do some work. You know what I mean? It's like you just go train on your own and you cherish those rides where you just get an open big chunk of riding, because I ride with my friends and it's just like my favorite thing to do. But when you're doing a workout, it's just you're doing your work. So I like the gym because I'm there and I'm doing my work, and so is everybody else. And it feels social, even though everyone's focused doing their own thing. Like you get some social stimulation by everyone else there doing their thing. And, you know, you start to make friends with other people that are there and, you know, give each other a fist bump when you're walking by, doing a set, whatever. And I really enjoy that part of the gym. And, you know, at the same time too, like you're lifting weights. So you do it for a couple weeks and you noticeably feel better and you look better. You look stronger. It's cool. It doesn't take that much time to notice this with a bit of consistency. And
do you ever just,
well, like, and too, like I notice the days that I go to a good gym session, then I go train on my bike later, that like I'm engaged. My muscles have already been doing that work. Like things are firing nicely. And I like to hit the gym before I train. Worst case scenario, you're feeling a bit dull from some big heavier day, but it never is getting in the way of my cycling, my bike workout later in the day.
and when you're at the gym, do you ever jump in and just spot a buddy on the bench press?
No, they're like, dude, I see your arms. Like I'll find someone else to spot me.
Yeah, if you need a spot, you don't go to the pro cyclists in the gym.
Yeah. And the gym's interesting too, because like I go to this gym in Santa Cruz called Santa Cruz Power Fitness, and like it's a powerlifting gym. Like there's a lot of big people in there, just huge. And then there's also a few athletes, and you can tell like who the powerlifters are and the athletes just purely based on physique. It's cool. I mean, it's a cool community because like a couple guys there that there's a couple guys that used to race bikes, and they one day my bike was in the gym and they recognized my name on the top tube, and now we're friends. And they are like, they don't race anymore, but they watch all the racing still, and we get to talk about bikes, and then I can ask them about weightlifting and this and that. And yeah, I don't know. It's just a cool environment.
And Tobin, increasingly, there's some really interesting content being made around gravel racing in particular, with the BWR Arizona that you mentioned you just raced recently. There's really pretty awesome coverage through Instagram stories. I know that I and a lot of friends who are fans of the sport were watching. I think it was Unroad Unlimited was the Instagram handle, had really cool coverage. And then, of course, there's the Call of a Lifetime YouTube series. And I'm curious, as an athlete, how do you feel about the Call of a Lifetime series? And what reaction have you seen to that? What is it doing for the sport?
Yeah, so the Call of a Lifetime series, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't in that's nothing I'd not lie about. I wasn't in Lifetime last year. I did a couple of those races where I performed well enough to even be relevant in that video, even though my name wasn't mentioned since I wasn't in the series. So I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch all of them. I've watched about half of them. And I mean, they're done incredibly well, which is important. They do a good job of covering the race. They do a good job of showing the athletes, and then they do a good job of developing some narrative around these races and being like, this athlete has his personality. Yeah. And growing personalities, because that's what we need in this sport. And so what I'm seeing, and I mean, Keegan and I have talked about it too. We're seeing like outside people starting to watch these that aren't cyclists and find them engaging, which is crucial for our sport. I mean, if we can pull non-endemic viewers, non-endemic sponsors, that's what enables these big sports in our country to be big sports, you know, is like NFL and baseball having huge money and huge sponsorships and huge interest from the American population. And if we can draw those people into cycling, you know, that's that's what it's going to take to make this like super healthy again, like it was 20 years ago. So, I mean, I'm stoked. I think it's all for the better. And, you get some people hating on gravel here and there or whatever, but it's like, it's good for our sport. It's all the same. We're all cycling. What's good for gravel is good for road, is good for cyclocross. We just need people to be excited about it. We need it to be interesting because it can be such a sterile thing with really nerdy analytics, and it's just like, it's not approachable. So making it approachable and interesting it's great. It's what we need.
And the courses themselves, but they're both fun to race. I've done a bit of gravel racing. I apexed in, probably 2015. So it's been a minute, but I got second in the Unbound 100 twice before it was a highly, highly competitive thing. And you had people like Ashton Lambie and Stephen Hyde and Peter Sagan showing up.
Yeah.
But, I think part of what's compelling is the format itself, the terrain, and it seems like it's really pulling in a new generation of racers. And then it's also generating, at least among people covering the sport and among some of the individuals who have large platforms, there seems to be a lot of drama around, which riders are showing up, why people coming over from Europe. It kind of reminds me of the early days of, like the Don Myra era of Norba racing, almost, when a similar thing started to happen. What does it feel like for you as someone inside the sport at the very highest level? How is the sport transforming, and what do you think it's doing, both from a competitive point of view and for the people following the sport?
Yeah. So, I mean, for people following and or participating that aren't necessarily at the point end of like a professional race, I think that something that's really cool for those people is to be able to do their event in their race or their ride in whatever capacity they're trying to do it, whether that be I'm trying to go and like go as fast as I can and hang on to the pros as long as I can, or I'm trying to go out and just complete this, or I'm trying to go have a good day with my friends or whatever. I think that something that is really cool is that at the end of the day, when they finish and we finish and everyone's at the expo, we all did the same course. So we get to talk about the same things and the same experiences, really, because like some of these courses have some grueling features, or some of them have some pretty views, or some of them have like an open cattle range with cows all over that you had to not hit. And at the end of the day, we get to talk about that shared experience because we all did the same course. And that is like, that's a pretty unique, I don't think that exists in any other sport. You don't get like professional baseball players and other baseball players that did the same thing there, because it's not. And then at the end of the day, they can just walk up to their favorite pro and just like be like, that was cool, or I'd love to meet you, or whatever it is. And I don't think there's anything else like that really in the world. So I think that's huge. And then I guess as far as like the drama and something to follow from a spectator, like there's a lot of, it's kind of the Wild West. Like there's not like a ton of like super steadfast rules. Like there's obviously like doping control, right? But as far as like, it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to compare it to Formula One, but there's strategy, right? To like feeding and pitting and how much water you're going to carry and your fueling and when and where you're going to do that. And like we see little snippets of like drama all over the place, like Keegan at Steamboat last year, like Peter Stetno's yelling because Keegan Peter said he like skipped a feed, but Keegan like didn't skip a feed. He just had a Camelback on and he didn't need to stop. And Pete had done the same thing somewhere else. So it's like, it's just kind of like out strategizing each other. And I truly believe that like no one is going to capitalize on someone's, like if someone stops to fill their bottle of feed, someone's not like out of the saddle sprinting, attacking them. But like if you can keep rolling and they got to chase you, you're going to take that opportunity every chance you get. And then there's always the strategizing of like, what tires do I run? Do I run a faster tire and risk flatting or crashing? Do I run a heavier tire and know that I'm not going to flat? Like, it's such a dynamic race with so many variables that you need to think about and plan for, that you just don't have in any other sport. Like, especially cyclocross. Like cyclocross, you run a 33 millimeter tire and you don't feed. You just go out there and hammer and try to, outmaneuver each other. And I think that's obviously awesome too. But gravel has, do you want bottles on your bike? Do you want to pit here? Do you have this in case you flat? What tires are you running? Are you going to run a hydration pack? One thing after another. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the cool drama that people are like enjoying watching.
What's your favorite course?
Man, honestly, my favorite course race is Lost and Found, which is in Northern California. It's kind of near, I guess the closest big town would be Truckee. And it's off of highway, I think it's called Highway 89 near Truckee. You take that into this valley, and the race is in this town called Portola. And it's a gravel race. It's 100 miles. And it's kind of the first gravel event I ever did. And it's just grueling. Like, it's nasty. It's like a bit of altitude, and you're on like Jeep trails sometimes you're on a road. There's not really a lot of single track. And it's so hard, and you're going so fast on these little 40 millimeter tires. Like, one year Carl Decker won on a mountain bike, it's like, it's that kind of hard course. And unfortunately, it's the same weekend as Unbound, and it always has been. So you get a pretty divided field there, unfortunately. And I wish that those two could just talk to each other and just not do that. But, someone's unyielding. I don't know who. But that's probably the most fun gravel race I've ever done. But, I'm going to do a lot of new ones this year too. And BWR Arizona last week was also really fun. They're all just so fun because like you're just going so hard the whole time, and yeah, just trying to keep it together. But I'm gonna say Lost and Found, hands down.
How has the logistical complexity of what you do, just moving equipment around, like right now you're in Tucson with Keegan, you're training there, is it more or less complex than it used to be when you were more primarily focused on cyclocross? And what goes into all the logistics and ops with what you're doing?
So yeah, we got two sides of I'd say like logistical complexities. Cyclocross is a logistical nightmare from a gear standpoint, while gravel is a logistical nightmare from a support while racing standpoint. So cyclocross is you got to have two identical bikes because you have a pit bike. And then cyclocross still races on tubulars, and tubular tires, if you guys don't know, they glue onto the rim. So you're not swapping that like a normal bike tire. It literally glues onto the rim, and it's a process to get that thing mounted. So when I go race cross, and if I want to show up to a race feeling prepared with every possible equipment scenario that I might need, I'm going with two bikes, and I'm going with minimum 6 sets of wheels. That's a lot. And you're bringing wheel sets. You're not bringing, you're not bringing 2 wheel sets with a bunch of different tires. These tires are glued to the rim, like I said. So you are bringing wheel sets. And so for a cross, like I said, I'm bringing 2 bikes, and I'm bringing 2 sets of file treads, 2 sets of intermediates, and 2 sets of muds. So that's 6 sets of wheels. That's 12 wheels. Like, that's a lot of stuff to travel with. And I mean, sometimes you'll take a gamble and be like, oh, I don't know, the weather on the East Coast is looking dry. Maybe I'm going to just like fly with only my bike case and my extra wheel bag. But sometimes, you're like, it could be anything. So I got to bring everything. So that sucks. But once you're at the cross venue, it's just a cyclocross loop, right? So it's not like you need like some feed zone or something. You can't even do that. All you need is a mechanic to hold your bike in the pit. So the prep for cross and the equipment is a nightmare. And then once you're racing, it's easy. It's all handled. Gravel, you're probably bringing your gravel bike and a set of backup wheels and maybe a set of tires to change. So from that part, the equipment's really straightforward and simple. And the hard part is like the logistics of BWR, for example. We have Myron, our mechanic, and then we have Sam, who works for Santa Cruz, that is there to help feed. So we have 2 feeders, and those guys need to be at like 5 or 6 different feed zones all over this 120-mile course. And they have to feed Keegan, they have to feed me, and they have to feed our third teammate, Alexis Skarda. So Alexis is in the female, or she's in the women's race. So they aren't, if they do start the same time as us, there's usually a separation by the first feed. And Sam, if he's at the first feed, has to feed Keegan, who sometimes already has a couple minute gap on me. He has to feed me. Then he has to feed Alexis. And then after he feeds Alexis, he has to get in the van and try to get to the 3rd feed zone. So he's going from 1 to 3. Myron, our other mechanic and feeder, is already at feed zone 2 to do the same thing. We're going to hit feed zone 2. And now things start to get complicated because the gaps have gotten bigger. So if Alexis is 20 minutes down from us at feed zone 2, Sam has to worry about his ability to feed her a bottle and then not miss Keegan at the front going to the next feed zone, if you're kind of catching my drift. So that's where things get complicated, and we can make a plan. All of us make a plan the night before, but you know, on the day, if something happens and he misses, like, you know, if he misses Alexis, it's bad because she's probably leading her race. And if he misses Keegan, that's bad because he's probably leading his race, you know? So the juggling act there is pretty insane. And at the end of the day, we kind of do it. Everyone kind of does know each other. So if like Keegan or Alexis is just like screwed, someone probably is going to give them a bottle, but you know, you ideally execute your plan perfectly. And that's hard to do because now we're looking at time gaps and we're looking at average speeds and we're guessing when we're going to be at these feed zones. And then at the same time, we're looking at maps and driving distances to see if these things all are in fact going to line up for a successful logistical cluster. Yeah. So they're opposite on that side, but they both have their complexities.
With gravel, have you ended up in a situation where you're without nutrition at a time that you need it, or the system kind of falls apart?
Not yet, but honestly, it's a matter of time. Like, yeah, no, not yet. Like, yeah, I did miss a bottle. I missed a bottle. Like I just butterfingered slipped it. And I was like, didn't have it. And I was like, well, that's on me. Like Sam did his job and I blew the bottle hand off. So, that's worst case, but you know, sometimes there's like someone in the group that'll just see you drop the bottle and like, we're kind of all friends and competitors. So if someone like dropped a ball and they got nothing, you'd be like, dude, do you like need like a little bit of water or whatever? And usually people are kind of cool about that, but I haven't just been like left high and dry, but I don't know. I honestly, I just wouldn't be surprised if that happens at some point this year. Not because it's anyone's fault, but because it's just such a cluster. Yeah.
So Tobin, you're a very high level professional athlete. You've been at the top of cyclocross. You're a high level competitor in gravel, and you're there in Tucson training with probably the greatest rider in gravel currently, Keegan. What is that relationship like, and what does it feel like to line up to compete with him?
Yeah, I mean, Keegan and I have a great relationship because, I don't think it gets much better than what we have because Keegan respects me and my opinions and my setup notes. He knows that I'm good at setting the bike up, and he knows that I know what I'm talking about on tires, suspension, whatever it is. And at the same time, I feel that way about Keegan. Like I kind of default to what Keegan's doing, and there's no ego clashing, like Keegan's the best. And it's not this weird competitiveness where I'm like feeling like Keegan's getting more support and that's affecting my ability to beat Keegan and show that I'm actually the top dog. Like everyone just, as far as Keegan and I go, like I know that Keegan's kind of the boss and that's cool. And he has a lot more experience in gravel because he's done all the big races the last 2 years too. So like I have a lot to learn from Keegan, and then we can still bounce ideas off each other. And we're just like, we're super close friends. We're into a lot of the same things. We both ride motorcycles. We like, cars, all the other stuff. We get along really well too. And then something that has benefited me a lot as an athlete is Keegan is a lot more, like analytical than I am. And he is reading the latest science and how to get that 0.5% or 1%. And, I think that's kind of somewhere that I could do better as an athlete, is to kind of commit more of my spare time to, trying to like gain that percentage, or two. And, Keegan is doing that and has found a way to do these things and refine these processes. So I just kind of get to piggyback on like things that have worked for him and then adapt and dial them in for myself, without doing all that back work, to be terribly honest. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a relationship where we both support each other incredibly well. And I mean, I couldn't ask for a better setup. And at the end of the day, we line up to race and it's like, I know we get to go out for a nice team dinner after Keegan wins, and I'll cross the line and I'll just be like, did Keegan win? And Keegan will be like, yeah, I won. I'm like, nice, dude. Cool. Yeah, it's rad. Like I just feel like I've said it a million times, just super lucky to be in this position with this brand and these teammates.
Tobin, in that science-based marginal gains category, one of the things that's gotten super popular in the last 2.5 years is riders taking in more and more carbohydrate per hour. Some people now up to like 150, 170 grams. And they used to think, hey, you can only process 75 grams of carbohydrate. Is there anything else that's happening now that's legal and science-based that you've picked up from Keegan or other people that you found to be really effective?
So first of all, fueling is huge. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of ignorant to the fueling stuff. I mean, I knew that like the days that I performed well, I was putting a ton in. But something that I've learned from Keegan and tried to refine is exactly like what you're talking about. Like, at the bare minimum, 90 grams of carbs an hour. Ideally, you're hitting 120 to 150. We are starting to see like diminishing returns on anything kind of like above that 150 mark. Like when you're putting that much in, you're upping the chances quite highly of just having like GI distress, and you're trying to put as much carbs in as you can without your stomach being upset. So yeah, I've refined my fueling a lot with Keegan, and he is working with Never Second, which is a newer nutrition company, but they've made it super simple with basically everything they do is blocked in chunks of 30. So the gels are 30 grams of carbs. The drink mix is either 30 or 90. And it's easy to just be like, okay, this is 30, that's 60, that's 90. Even a dumb bike racer can do the easy math on that, right? And just be paying attention, setting that timer on your computer to remind you, just eat, because you can get into some of these races that are super hard and, you've gone almost 90 minutes without eating anything because you've just been like so on the rivet. And so I've learned a lot there. And this is newer science, like you said, that is saying these high carb intake is directly related to performance. And I've also felt that feeling with the high carb thing. The next I guess, bit to gain that I've been maybe just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, is bike position. Narrower bars, tilting the hoods in. It looks terrible. It looks so bad, but it's fast. And obviously we wear skin suits whenever possible. That's not something you got to convince anyone to do. But something I've done a lot even the last couple of weeks is like, can I put my stem? Can I take a spacer out? Can I drop my stem? Can I tilt my hoods in and feel good? Can I drop a little bit lower and feel like I'm still making good power? Keegan's always toying with that. And so when he's like, dude, you got to drop your stem, you got to tilt your hoods in, I do it and I try it. I'm like, yeah, that did feel good. That did feel fast. Like, you're right. So I've gained a lot there, and we're seeing a lot of other people gain a lot there. I mean, you're seeing all these world tour guys, their hoods are just like tilted so far in, it just looks crazy, but it's super fast. So bike position, nutrition, and then just like tire inserts. I knew tire inserts are good, but Keegan has probably tried every single tire insert that is available. Like, he spent hundreds of dollars on different inserts, trying to figure out what he thinks is the best, what he thinks is the fastest. He'll test them on the rollers to try to feel which one's got the most resistance. And it's actually, somewhat scientific. Like, if you get on the rollers and you got your speed sensor and you ride 20 miles an hour on the rollers with every different combo, how many watts does it take to make 20 miles an hour? And boom, you've got like a cursory method of figuring out some rolling resistance with inserts. So I'd say nutrition is the biggest thing. But yeah, trying new positions and just trying new stuff and taking out in training and refining your bike and your body to, be optimized on race day.
We don't want to give away the secret to the world's best tire inserts on this podcast. I feel like that might be is that a competitive secret for you guys right now?
It may or may not be, but I can't say anything because I don't want Keegan.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, no, totally. I'm gonna text you though after this, Tobin, because I want to know what they are for my personal use, and
okay,
I won't dime you out, man. Yeah. Okay.
I know last year in particular, there were some races where Keegan's like, I'm going to try this. Like, I've got this crazy idea. And I'm just like, all right, man. Like, I won't say anything. But if it works, let me know.
Yeah, I loved in the Call of a Lifetime series, Keegan talked about broadcasting misinformation about like his tire pressure or which tires he was going to ride, because he knew his competitors would freak out and over-rotate and adjust their equipment, and then he'd have an advantage, which is, like you said, equipment setup's a big part of the game. It's part of why it's fun as a participant and as a fan of the sport. One of the things I enjoy the most, there are less and less of these, and I'm hoping there will be more, is just seeing those tech galleries of what are the pros riding, seen some really interesting setups. Ben Delaney does a little bit of it, and a couple of other journalists, but not as much anymore. But one last area I wanted to explore with you, Tobin, like there's the business side, there's all the effort you put into it. And then you're also on the road. You're in a lot of different locations in situations where this is your job. You have to perform when you wake up in the morning, but you're in, whatever. You're just in some bed in an Airbnb probably that you've never slept in. What do you do to get a good night's sleep, and how much sleep do you shoot for generally?
That's a good question. And I mean, the answer is no mystery. Like, ideally I'm getting 8 hours minimum, and like, if I'm really dialed, like getting 9, cause you get 9 hours of sleep, you feel good. Something that's a struggle living on the West Coast or the Western United States is when you fly east, you do lose time. So, if we're going to the East Coast or the Midwest or something, and you're 2 hours time difference, if you don't get there early enough to adapt to that time zone at all, like, you might be falling asleep at midnight, which feels like 10 o'clock your time, which is about when you'd probably be actually falling asleep. But if you're falling asleep at midnight, and then these goddamn gravel races start at 7 a.m., like, dude, you got to get up so early. So, I mean, there's almost nothing you can do except for try not to stress about it. But ideally, you're getting there 5-6 hours early. 5-6 days early to do some course recon and try to like be falling asleep early so that 4 a.m. wake up doesn't feel so bad. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, again, we're lucky because we've got great support from Santa Cruz. So we're usually in a pretty comfortable Airbnb. Every athlete gets a good bed. The only thing we got to worry about is like who gets the master room. But yeah, I mean, like last year, Keegan and I shared it. Sometimes we'll share a room, but we're both in a bed. So we're pretty fortunate there. And I think as far as like race day or race night sleep, it's important to remember that what's more important than that night before your race are the 3 nights prior to that. So if you're getting, it's like charging a battery, you know, if you get good sleep those 2-3 nights beforehand, like you're going to be pretty good, because in reality, if that race starts at 7 a.m., everyone's getting up early and no one got a good night of sleep, because we all have the same anxious, you know, nervous energy before big races. And, you know, I'm a big proponent of like, you've got so many variables in bike racing and I mean, your life, right? So really look at these variables and look at what you can control and what you have control over and what you can change. And then the ones you can't change, like the weather or what other people are doing, just don't worry about them, because, you know, it's wasted energy and it's not doing anything positive for you and it's not helping you gain anything.
Now that you're doing the Lifetime series, I'm wondering, given the prevalence of mustaches within the pro racing gravel field, it's almost like being California Highway Patrol. You almost have to have a mustache. There are a couple of anomalies, of course, Keegan among them. Do you feel peer pressure to have a mustache, and is it kind of intense on the line, like the showdown between the mustaches?
It's not great, but you know, I'm blessed with good hairy genes, for better or worse. Actually blessed, I guess. But yeah, I'm lucky to be able to have a nice prominent mustache. But there's a lot of other, you know, hair fashion out there that, you know, you can't even see right now necessarily. Like bleached hair is worth extra speed. Learned that from Keegan. Whether or not my girlfriend likes it is a completely different topic. But yes, I know she likes the mustache, so at least I've, you know, still got points there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing those trade secrets, Tobin, and I think we'll see a lot more amateur racers with bleached locks here in the coming season. So thanks for joining me today, and if people want to learn more about you, follow you, where should they go?
Instagram is our, you know, I guess that's everyone's primary form of social media nowadays. And that's just at McTubin with 3 B's, because someone took the handle with 2 B's before I was on Instagram, and they will not reply to my DMs to try to get the handle from them. So McTubin with 3 B's it is.
You pull the right strings, you get on top of the right podium this year, and I think the team manager is going to be able to get that handle back for you.
Oh, let's hope. I'm sick of it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Tobin.
Sweet. Thank you.